So looking back last year, the way the Packers went out in the season, losing to the 49ers 13-10 to Jimmy Garoppolo, I wouldn't have in thousands, millions of years expected that game. If you would have told me before that game that the 49ers are going to score 13 points, I would say to myself, oh, that's an easy dub for the Packers. But somehow the Packers were only able to get 10 points in that game, which honestly, still a little shocking to me. We start off 7-0, drive down the field. The Packers score. I was at that game, and it was a great way to start. Near the end, things slowly were looking a little bleak until, the final moment when the 49ers win that game. And I was sitting there among tons of Packers fans, and everyone just sort of in shock, in disbelief for what just went down. We're like, did we really just lose to the 49ers, to Jimmy Garoppolo, when they scored 13 points? And yes, we did. So now we are at the end of June. We are about a month away from training camp, and the question is, can the Packers, make it to the Super Bowl, make a deep playoff run? And I really honestly think, looking at this team, looking at what we did this offseason, even though we lost Davante Adams, I think the Packers are in a prime position to make a playoff run. So first off, I want to start off looking at the defense, because I honestly think that defense is going to be the biggest strength of the Packers coming into 2022. There are definitely more question marks among the offense and the receivers in that entire situation ever since Davante Adams left, but I really think that defense is going to be the reason that the Packers are going to be very successful. Of course, Aaron Rodgers is still going to be Aaron Rodgers, but I really think the Packers defense is going to be successful. So first off, starting with Davante Adams leaving the Packers, I think that could turn into, one of the reasons the Packers defense will be able to be even better in 2022, because there's no question, if Davante Adams wouldn't have left, we probably wouldn't have been able to keep Devondre Campbell and Rasul Douglas. We'll never know. Maybe the Packers could have finagled the salary cap, because you can pretty much do that whenever you want. It seems there is a limit, of course, but you can move things around. But I think that if Davante Adams would have stayed, that $20 million that we saved with Davante Adams being traded allowed us to keep both Devondre Campbell and Rasul Douglas. Devondre Campbell signing a 5-year, $50 million contract. And just seeing him last year, how productive he was holding together the middle of the Packers defense. I think he had 4 total missed tackles with only a 2.9% missed tackle rate, which is insane. And so being able to keep him in the middle of that defense, and then also being able to bring back Rasul Douglas, who somehow Brian Gutekunst finds off of a practice squad, signing Rasul to a 3-year, $21 million deal. And if Davante wasn't traded, I doubt we were able to keep both of those guys. And so before Davante was traded, that's why I was a little worried. I was thinking, okay, we found 2 cheap, very valuable guys in Devondre and Rasul. We were able to pay them next to nothing for what they produced for us. And now, of course, they're both going to be looking for a massive contract. And I was thinking, okay, Rasul, he seemed like he wanted to come back to Green Bay, but when there's other teams out there offering you tons of money, I don't think you can fault a guy for choosing a team that maybe offers you more money. I don't know if Rasul was offered a bigger contract somewhere else. He could have been, and he could have decided to stay around in Green Bay, because I think it is a nice situation for anyone in Green Bay. Any free agents out there like Julio, Odell, if you're watching this, which you're probably not, Green Bay, it's a great situation. Maybe you could take like a cheap contract, just a thought. But Rasul decides to come back to Green Bay, and the Packers defense, for the most part, gets to stay around. Of course, we do lose Darius Smith, but with him barely playing last year, I don't think we're going to see much an effect of that. And we still have a strength in Preston Smith or Rashawn Gary. Rashawn Gary, I think, is going to solidify himself this next year as one of the best edge rushers in the NFL. So now when we look at the Packers' cornerback situation, Rasul Douglas last year only allowed 51.5% of targets as receptions, which is 7th best in the NFL. A guy who was a little bit ahead of him was Eric Stokes, who was targeted 96 times but only allowed catches on 51% of the time, which was tied for 5th best in the NFL and had 9 pass breakups. So already having Rasul Douglas and Eric Stokes coming back to Green Bay on this defense, just the way that they played last year, and then now bringing back Jair, who only played in 4 games last season with the shoulder injury. So the fact that the Packers defense was able to play just as good as they did last year, being the 10th best scoring defense in the NFL, and that was without Jair Alexander, arguably the best corner in the NFL. So imagine 2022 already having the guys that we have here, bringing back Jair, who in most games can come in and lock down the number 1 option. He can switch around to other guys as well, but he can come in and pretty much, for the most part, lock down some of the best wide receivers in the league. So to have Jair, and then now to have Rasul and Eric still here to cover the rest of the field at corner, huge move for the Packers to be able to keep Rasul. And I think, too, when you look at Eric Stokes, considering last year he played as well as he did as a rookie, and now he's coming into his 2nd season where we've seen time and time again players in their 2nd, 3rd year take huge leaps forward. We saw Rashawn Gary last year break out to a new level. I think that, of course, had to do a lot with Zadarius Smith not being there, but that was his third year, breakout year. Eric Stokes already played great last year, and now he's coming with all the experience, the knowledge of the defense, and now he's coming into year 2. And then you add in the fact, too, that this will be Joe Barry's second year as a defensive coordinator, and I think we saw with Matt LaFleur coming into his second year just how much the offense improved coming into year 2, just because the time spent, the players, for the most part, know what's going on, and now they can just come in here and execute. So this defense, I think, they're going to be a top 5 defense. That's my prediction. They were top 10 last year, 10 overall. And with the additions here, with Joe Barry's second year, I think top 5, honestly, I feel like it's very, very doable for this defense. And then here, looking at the additions, Quay Walker at number 22, who's basically a Devondre Campbell clone. Devondre Campbell, 6'4", 230. Quay Walker, 6'4", 240. So basically now we have 2 Devondre Campbells instead of 1, which is going to be very beneficial, I would say. So I want to read some quotes from Brian Gutekunst after the draft, and I got this quote from Packers Wire. So he says this, Brian Gutekunst: "It's been a while since we've been able to stay in certain packages with 2 inside backers and handle everything in run defense and the passing game. This really gives our defense a ton of flexibility," Gutekunst said Thursday night. Then he goes on to say, "Every defensive coordinator would love to have 2 guys that can really run and do the things that the guys that we have can do now with Quay and Dre," Gutekunst said. "There's an ability now for us to stay in base and nickel in certain situations that maybe we hadn't had." So last year with Chris Barnes alongside Devondre Campbell, Chris Barnes is a solid player, but I do think that Quay Walker is going to be much better than Chris Barnes was. As Gutekunst said, now the Packers have that ability to keep those guys out there on pretty much every play, so it's going to be much harder or much better overall to have 2 studs like Devondre Campbell out there at all times to stop the run, to come and fill those holes. And Quay Walker, just like Devondre Campbell, a very sure tackler in college. Quay Walker rarely missed tackles. So now we basically have 2 Devondre Campbells, which, watching Devondre Campbell last year, very positive news. Now moving to the Packers defensive line. I do think this is going to be one of the best defensive lines the Packers have had in years and years. First off, the guys we are already bringing back: Preston Smith, Rashawn Gary, who both played lights out last year. Kenny Clark, a beast on the inside. And now looking at, I think the biggest add, of course, is Devonte Wyatt at number 28 overall. Who knows how long it'll take for him to really be plugged into this defense. Maybe his first year he doesn't play as many snaps as he probably will in year 2 or 3. But I think he can give the Packers lots of very, very valuable snaps to be able to have Devonte Wyatt along Kenny Clark's side, to have them next to each other. We've seen how much teams double team Kenny Clark at times, and so to have a player of the caliber and the size and the athleticism of Devonte Wyatt is going to make it that much harder, because now if you double Kenny Clark, Devonte Wyatt could be one-on-one, and I don't really think you want that either. So it's going to be very tough, I think, for offenses to find a way to consistently beat this Packers defense. Also, to adding Jarran Reed from the Chiefs. He wasn't super productive last year, but he's still a very good pass rusher from the interior. I think last year he had 3 sacks with the Chiefs. Year before that had 9. So hopefully he can come in and bring some, experience and play sort of as he previously had played. So overall, the Packers defense, I do think, can carry this team very, very far. We saw last year just how good they were in the playoffs, as I said, only allowing 10 points to the 49ers, and most games where, or 13 points overall. Most games where a team scores 13 points on Aaron Rodgers, I think the Packers offense should win. And I think coming into next year with the Packers defense, I think going to be a top 5 defense. This offense doesn't have to be a top 5 offense. I think they have the ability. But if we look last year to the Packers offense, with Devontae Adams here, we were the 10th best scoring offense in the NFL, averaging about 25.5 points per game. Now, of course, Devontae is gone. And the stat that has been brought up a lot, that I've brought up in the past, is the fact that the Packers were 7-0, averaging about 32 points per game without Devontae Adams. Sure, that could be a small sample size, but we've seen in the past, the Packers have been able to spread the ball around and be very productive on offense when Devontae Adams is gone. And I wish Devontae would have stayed. I love Devontae Adams as a fan. It's sad when, an elite player on your team leaves. But at the same time, we've seen in the past, the Packers have been able to weather that storm. And now we also added 4 wide receivers. And I made a video a few days ago, maybe last week, saying that, with these 4 new wide receivers when it comes to the draft, and Sammy Watkins, Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, Samori Toure, we don't need all these guys to come in their first year and dominate. Even if one of these guys comes in, has a very, very solid season, I think the Packers will do just fine, considering also Lazard here, Randall Cobb, hopefully Amari Rodgers can take a step forward. But I do think the signing of Sammy Watkins, a cheap contract, mainly based on incentives, it gives him an opportunity to come back and show that he still has it, which hopefully he does. There's just some uncertainties with these wide receivers. And also, too, with Christian Watson here, the Packers trading 2 of their first or second round draft picks to move up to get Christian shows how good Christian Watson is and how good the Packers believe he can be at 6'4" and blazing speed. Even if it takes him some time to become an insanely good route runner, which I still think he's a pretty solid route runner. I mean, we saw Devontae Adams grow as a route runner as years went by, but because Christian Watson has that blazing speed, I mean, if he's out there, defenses have to account for that. You have to be ready and watching Christian Watson. So just like MVS, I think stretched the field last year for the Packers with his crazy speed. I think Christian Watson could play a similar role, and hopefully him and Aaron Rodgers can build that chemistry. And then also to Romeo Doubs, who I think, with him having 2,000-yard seasons in his past few years in college, he has been very productive and a very polished player, as Gutekunst like to call him, one of the more polished players from this draft class, per Brian Gutekunst. I think this Packers offense is going to be, just fine. Also, too, when we look at last year's game versus the 49ers, these 3 players were out with ACL tears: Robert Tonyan, Elton Jenkins, and David Bakhtiari. And hopefully by the time the playoffs comes around, we have all these guys back. When it comes to Bakhtiari, the Packers are hopeful and anticipate him being ready for training camp. We'll see in, I guess, a month or so if he's out there, and hopefully he will be back to his former self. So once he's back, and once Elton Jenkins comes back, hopefully within the first couple months of the season, same with Robert Tonyan, the Packers will have lots of their studs and lots of guys that Rodgers has that chemistry with, has played with before out there on offense. And I think last year, if the Packers would have had a healthy Elton Jenkins and David Bakhtiari, I think that could have been a difference in that game, because Rodgers was sacked, according to ESPN, 5 times in that game versus the 49ers. And so I think having Elton out there, one of the best offensive linemen in the NFL, same with David Bakhtiari, one of the best offensive linemen in the NFL, things I think would have been much different versus the San Francisco 49ers. So considering these guys should be back sometime later in the season, I honestly think just overall, things are really looking up for this Packers team. As I stated, the defense is going to be legit. I'm excited to see this defense. I think it will be one of the best Packers defenses in a very long time. And then I'll add that alongside an offense that I still think should be able to be productive enough to win game after game, as they typically have these past few years. The Packers, I think, are going to make a deep playoff run, and hopefully finally this year will be the year we get back to the Super Bowl after it's been 10, 12, it's been a while. So hopefully with Aaron Rodgers getting up there in age, this season can be a season to remember for the Packers. But let me know your guys' thoughts in the comments down below. And if you haven't subscribed, I put up Packers content pretty much every single day. So if you want to see more of it, subscribe down below, drop a like on the video, and I'll see you guys next time.